evening, everyone, and welcome. I'm Lucia Cascioli, your host and one of the participants in this evening's September Stories in the City. I would like to begin by acknowledging that here in the Greater Toronto Area, we are on the traditional territory of many First Nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. The GTA is home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. This area is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and by the Williams Treaties, signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. We are grateful to have the opportunity to work and live in this territory. We begin this evening with two back-to-back readings, the first by Darlene Madot, the second by Giovanna Riccio. Darlene is the author of 9 books, including Stations of the Heart and Making Olives and Other Family Secrets. She has twice won the Bressani Literary Award and has been shortlisted for the Vanderbilt-sponsored Carter V. Cooper Award 3 times. Her short fiction has garnered numerous literary awards and been widely anthologized. A lawyer who practiced for over 3 decades in Toronto, her latest Winners and Losers, Tales of Life, Law, Love, and Longing is a collection of linked stories that turns a dazzling searchlight on the inner workings of the legal profession, told from the viewpoint of a feisty narrator finding her way through a hostile and competitive law environment.
Thank you, Lucia, for inviting me to this, and to the participants, and to our audience. I'm going to read from a piece called Messages Undelivered, which is from a pending collection called Closing Ceremonies, Tales of Abandonment, Betrayal, and Consequence. If you leave, then not a single day can my heart rest at ease, not a single day can I be me. Lohan. The handwritten message was printed in pencil, taped to a park bench on a bridge overlooking the Humber River. I'd had my tires rotated this morning and treated myself to take out lasagna from a hot table of a local bakery. The only common haunt where there's a scintilla of chance I might see him, though the hour I went was an hour before lunch, not really a chance, just flirting with the possibility. I stand now, as I often do, at my kitchen counter, lasagna container propped on the bridge's railing, stands so the sauce won't drip onto my clothing. They must have sat here, the lovers, their final meeting, sitting in this very spot when she delivered to Lohan the news they were done. Was he blindsided? Did he think in leaving his papered words she would find them? That she would return again to the scene of the crime? Not a chance. This is clean break stuff. I want you to move on, he had told me, because he was already gone when I first learned he was leaving. No, she will never return, Lohan, never find your words pasted with such fragility to this bench. Of this I am certain. The rain, when it comes, will wash them away. The wind will blow what's left of your little piece of paper, one corner already ripped from the tape and fluttering. She didn't deserve you, Lohan, to throw away a love as great as yours. There's no explaining it. Yet you cannot find it in your heart to unlove her, nor to be grateful she gave you back, you. She is silent. I know this with certainty, as I know the silence that left me breathless, his typed letter in my mailbox in the middle of the night. It said nothing. It said, without saying, I have left you forever, my single humiliating howl. You are the only man I have loved for over 2 decades, the only man I have ever loved. I can't conceive of the rest of my life without you. I have carried on, rotating tires from summer to winter, winter to spring. Romeo, appropriately named, of the Alfa Romeo dealership asks me, did you two ever get back together? Is there another man in your life? No, I tell him. No, looking down, away, ashamed of my loyalty, the pain that won't leave, as did he. And you? He smiles, shakes his head. I flirt, he said. I look at the menu, but I don't order. Romeo makes me laugh. Maybe I'll ask you to dinner, he tests. And maybe I say, I'll let you ask me to dinner. Grateful for the kindness of the car salesman, Romeo, who knows I'm in no danger of ever accepting.
Giovanna is a poet, teacher, and independent scholar. She is the author of Vittorio, Strong Bread, and Plastics Republic, which was a finalist for the 2022 Bressani Prize. Her poems and other writings have appeared in national and international publications and in numerous anthologies, while translations of her work have been published in 6 languages. Giovanna is the 2021 winner of the Venera Fazio Poetry Prize.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for lending us your ear for this reading. And I want to thank Lucia for hosting us and all the work she did to organize this. So thank you, and for inviting me as well. Thank you, Lucia. So tonight I'm going to read a few poems from Plastics Republic. I think you recognize the person on the cover here because she's everywhere and has been everywhere all summer. So this is a book that I called Plastics Republic because it basically deals with, a good chunk of it is about Barbie, but it deals with her plasticity in matter and narrative, which is why I think she was able to stay at the top of the doll heap for so long, as well as plastic in general. So I'm going to begin with a poem about Lily, the Build Lily doll, which is the doll that she was actually based on. It's a German quasi-pornographic doll based on a cartoon character in a German tabloid. So many people don't know this history, but Ruth Handler, who developed Barbie and co-founded Mattel, saw her there in Germany and decided she was the perfect model for Barbie. So this is her European past coming through. This is called Out of Step. Lily doesn't travel alone. Teetering on feet, cast in unsettling stilettos, painted glossy black, she forfeits erect posture for the ease of the odalisque position. While Barbie broadens her horizons, Lily will never step on Malibu Beach, mount a Harley, or snag an Olympic medal. After shopping New York, Barbie kicks off her heels, though the arch remains. Lily's a male novelty, a leaner, doomed to kill time on dashboards, forced to forego the golf game. She dangles from rear-view mirrors, reflecting the future taking her from behind. So that's Lily, the shadow behind Barbie. And now I'm going to read something in Barbie's voice. I usually start my readings from this book with this because it's Barbie introducing herself as she was launched in 1959. With the name Barbara Millicent Roberts. It was clipped and they stopped using it, but originally she had a full name, a full bio, a plastic narrative that could be changed as required. This is called Always Barbie. Perfected by Japanese finesse, I am mass production with breasts. Barbara Millicent Roberts, a capital doll. Call me Barbie. I am game, the axial daughter of German pornography and Lady Liberty's dream. Plastic enough to co-opt every trend, I keep my always form and face. Change career, color, nation, and as positioning requires, twist and turn, at the neck and waist. Earning my own cash, investing in real estate, I travel through time and space. Come boxed, complete with a traveling case. Among my favorite accessories is one named Ken. And I'm going to end now with a poem from my penultimate section called Dolls in the Dark. Dolls in the Dark is based on silicone sex dolls. Everything in this book is true, by the way. So this section is based on a character that I found in a BBC documentary. I transcribed everything he said and then folded what he said into poems that I wrote. And so he had 2 silicone sex dolls. They're very expensive. And the first one he got was Ginger Brooke. That's what he named her. So he was a kind of poignant, sad character. And so I'm going to read Larry and Ginger Brooke. She's like a blow-up, but solid silicone, pliable, flexible, with a stainless steel skeleton. Heavy too, people heavy. Being loose jointed, she can't stand, but rest sitting or lying down. Like the website says, the poise and grace of a sleeping woman. They only had 3 body types back then. I chose style 1. 3 was tall and voluptuous, too much weight. Besides, I like natural looking women. Looking for a face, Brooke Shields struck me. Shining gray eyes, lush hair, a come hither star I could make a wish on. Damn, I told myself, she's sweet enough to eat. So it came to me how, as a kid, I loved gingerbread. Took me 10 months to save the money. I ordered Ginger Brooke in January. She arrived in late spring. Remember it just like yesterday. Too wired to eat, a sleepless night of waking dreams. Up 4 hours before my usual time, waiting for the light to wash up a fresh dawn. I tore to the window every time a truck roared by. He arrived in a styrofoam-lined wooden crate, double strapped around the neck and waist, a single silk carnation between her feet. In her black satin slip against a pure white background, my angel of mercy faced me. I moved her to the couch using the suggested bridal lift. Thank you very much for your kind attention and enjoy this reading.
Next, we have Antonio Facciponte. Antonia is a Toronto author. She received her master's degree in English literature and creative writing at the University of Toronto. Her first collection of poetry, titled To Make a Bridge, was published by Black Moss Press in 2021. And her poem, The House, was the winner of Accenti Poetry's contest in 2022. Please join me in welcoming Antonia.
Thank you so much for listening and for inviting me to read. And Darlene and Giovanna had really great readings so far, and I can't wait to hear everyone else tonight. I'm going to be reading a couple pieces, and I'm going to start with an old favorite from my book, To Make a Bridge. This is a book about family. It focuses a lot on Italian-Canadian culture and immigration, but in my mind, it's really about finding one's voice within and beyond family. And the poem I'm going to start with is called Intermezzo. Between arugula greens and aromatic espresso, the fruit platter signals a spell of cleansing. Between lusty crimson strawberries, lush cantaloupe flesh, fennel slices, crisp aqueous crescents with licorice hints that blot vinegar stains on my tongue. Crunching, I chronicle school shenanigans. Zios and Zias listen up, swaying their own children from neon-wrapped candies. Nonna rinses sugo off dinner plates, an adagio. Water sloshes, swirls round the bowl, mixing with cold tomato leftovers. Pulpy red specks whirlpool down the drain. Nonno takes a space at the table's edge, slicing a peach. Dismembered chunks plop into his glass of vino, a speechless ballad. He will retrieve the fruit with his knife, yield the pit to the crumb-dusted tablecloth. One of the grandchildren will spot the peach fiber and, perhaps, gnaw at the remains. I'm always really interested in the ways that stories are translated from one generation to the next, and then one voice to the next. So the next piece I'm going to be reading, it's a flash fiction piece, and in my mind, it's really about passing on stories to understand where we come from and where we're going, and looking to find home. And this story is called Leela, and it was recently published in the South Shore Review, an online magazine, and it won their flash fiction contest, so that's kind of nice. Leela. My daddy wasn't always blind. For many years, he was a shepherd, walking the fields with Russo, Titino, and Leela, his sheepdogs. They'd scratch at the door every morning, begging for my daddy, and when he opened the gate, Dio mio, all those sheep spilling into pasture. Russo would dart to the front of the flock, Titino swooping alongside it, and Leela catching stragglers in the back. My daddy taught me to speak with the dogs, to whistle over low green mountains and listen to each bark and snarl. By 9 years old, I knew the difference between stray sheep and rain and snake. I could howl back without losing my breath. At 60, maybe 65, my daddy couldn't see so good. I was in Canada by then. He wrote me, said he was losing his eyes. I should have gone back when I read that. I should have gone back when he was still alive. But traveling was expensive, and your papa and I could barely feed you, Anyway, when my sister found our daddy crawling back to their house with a broken leg, she said that's it, and because her husband was the farmhand before they wed, he took over the herd. So your granddaddy, Nonno Franceschino, would sit in a wooden chair and drink his vino, 1 glass in the morning, 1 after dinner. He made his vino in the cantina, in the fall. My mama, she was in the ground then, beside my little brother. Anyway, your nonno sat with a grease-stained mapina slung over his shoulder, a toothpick in his lips. Here and there, the barn cats would rub their, come si dice, their side bodies on his lower legs. Sure, the cats were nice. You'd go Misha Misha and they'd sniff your fingers. But they never stayed. They always went unnamed, meandering around one-eyed, two-eyed, maybe missing an ear. It's the sheepdogs that kept good company, especially Leela. Every day, when my daddy poured his first glass, Leela would go zoom zoom up the hill and stretch out beside him for an hour or so. I'm here, she'd whisper, and nuzzle her snout in his hands. Leela did this for years until one day, she didn't come. My daddy waited with hands open. Weeks passed. Nothing. He figured she died. But you know what? Late one evening, when the fields and mountains grew cool and hushed, a wet nose pushed into Nonno's hand, the snout small and soft and yipping. Another animal started teething on his thumb. A third one jumped onto him and tried to lap up his vino. Then Leela's voice barked hello. Thank you so much for your attention and for listening.
Thank you, Antonia. There's a warm familiarity in that story. It was wonderful. Thank you. Our next reader is going to be Michelle Alfano. Michelle is also from Toronto. She previously served as an associate director with the literary quarterly Descant. Her personal memoir, The Unfinished Dollhouse, was selected as one of the Globe and Mail's 100 best books of the year. Her novella, Made Up of Arias, was a winner of the Bressani Award for short fiction. Her short story, Opera, on which the novella was based, was a finalist for a Journey Prize anthology. She is currently working on a new novel entitled Olga and Maria. Please join me in welcoming Michelle Alfano.
Thank you, Lucia. I'm going to read from my first book, Made Up of Arias. Just very quickly, the premise is about a mother who is obsessed with Maria Callas and imagines herself to be Madame Butterfly. So there'll be a reference to a Japanese courtesan, which might sound odd in this context. In the last portion of the book, it talks about the demise of the patriarch of the family and the family's reaction to it. I'm going to read a short section from there. My mother let her lustrous black hair, the hair of a Japanese courtesan, quietly grow back its patches of silver and icy white, which appeared like swirls and waves along her broad cheeks at the side of her neatly combed bun. She had forsaken lipstick, too tired now to care for her appearance. The veins in her hands became more pronounced, or so it seemed to me. The spidery lines of blue along her legs were covered with fine black fur that she no longer shaved clean after a long, hot bath. She was the same weight, she told her sisters, but appeared thinner to me. The flesh on her arms, now pendulous and dimpled. She looked so much older than her 40 years, I thought. I wondered if my father noticed the difference in her looks. His glances remained unchanged, tender and protective, as if he still gazed on the rounded curves of the healthy farm girl in Sicily he had fallen in love with. Her shiny black braids, their coat like a crow's sheen, and her strong white teeth, one sturdy arm holding a basket of food and the other clutching some wayward younger child who was attempting to stray. What did she call out to him from the fields as she swayed past, hips and long black rope of hair beckoning? She was lovely in a natural way, he often said of her. He felt that she hadn't needed the paint and powder and gorgeous costumes. She had never agreed, loving to hide behind the masks of color and silk, enjoying the escape from herself. Even when the man in the bed next to him died, I found my father, for the first time in his life, crying in his room alone. I tricked myself and said it was because he felt sorry for this man, not because now he knew it was hopeless. I pushed that out of my head and bounced into his room in my kilt and sweater and gave him a hug, got some fresh water for flowers, told funny stories about the customers at a part-time job I had, something that happened at school or about the student council. He laughed, pushing strange thoughts out of his head momentarily, and smiled for me because I was confident, and he took heart in that. And I said to myself, I will not permit you to die, and I believed it. Even on the last day, when my mother and I were working, and we received a visit from my godfather who said that we must go to the hospital quickly, I had asked, is he dying? And he said, no, he just wants to see you. Even though his hand was trembling as he lit up cigarette after cigarette on the way to the hospital. I chose to believe him and took my time getting changed from my work clothes because there was no rush. But somehow, in another part of me, I knew that my godfather had lied to me. As I came into the room, I saw my father lying on the bed, gasping for breath, an oxygen mask in his hands, making tiny sucking noises. I thought I could somehow fix things, as if there was a button I could press or a tube I could move, and I only needed to find it. The circle of faces surrounding him mirrored mine. My fear, my stupefaction. The nurses were no longer irritated, no longer moving with hard, angry motions. All the energy was drained out of them as they moved around the room, adjusting dials. As quickly as I came into the room, I was pulled out of it by a wave of hands, gentle but insistent, into the common room, hazy with cigarette smoke and whispers. When I was finally allowed back in, my mother was on the far side of the bed holding his hand. And as I got closer, he said to me, "Listen to your mother." At that moment, I hated him. I didn't want to listen to her because what he was really telling me was that it was over. It was over. One weak hand pulsated in mine. There were bits of hair on his pillow, tiny curly gray-black strands, the little hair that was left from the chemotherapy. I felt an urge to brush them away or hide them, maybe save them. The gasping fits continued for hours, and finally I was too tired to watch anymore. I found a corner in which to curl up. My brother Joey fell asleep on the couch opposite me. I was vaguely confident my father could not slip away with so many of us here, as if we could catch the wisp of his soul as it escaped and could stuff it back into the thin shell that was now his body. A pair of worn hands shook me, I don't remember whose, and led me into the room. The gasping fits had ended. The circle of faces drew closer, sucking me in, a lesser planet, into the sphere of this larger one, enveloping me. And I was almost smothered by the force of its movement. I was sustained by it and powerless to leave my preordained path. In this, there was both gratification and terror. But it was this that also propelled me into the common room to tell my brother. He was curled up in a tight, small ball, his face empty of drama. His dark, tight curls lay on the arm of the couch. I touched his hair, soft and warm, pretty like my father's when he was young. I woke him gently, and he almost pushed me away, as if he was waking for school, and he wanted a few moments more. I said, "He's gone." He sat up on the couch and made angry little fists and turned away, refusing to cry in front of me. Every night after this one, I saw you, my father, floating in the darkness, and I reached out and touched it. Almost. Your mouth was perfectly round, as if you were in the middle of a phrase. Your eyes were shining, and I couldn't hear what you were saying, because you were saying something to me, and I knew that if I just looked a little harder, listened a little more carefully, I would understand you. One time, I saw your face projected on the royal blue of the evening sky above the house, as if it was a film on a screen. The sky was my cinema that night. You were speaking to someone, but it wasn't me. And again, I couldn't make out what you were saying. Even now, I take that memory and rewind it like film images through a projector. In another of my dreams, you were dressed like an angel in a long white gown, but without wings, and I wanted to ask you where the wings were. You came to the old house on Paradise Street where we lived, and we stood among mourners in black in the small living room with the plastic-covered furniture and the fake plants and the big black and white television. You said it was a mistake, and you stroked my cheek and told me not to cry. You pushed aside the astonished group of friends and family that crowded around the casket and told everyone to go home. It had all been a mistake, uno sbaglio. Each time I woke up, I felt this incredible surge of relief because this pain had been erased. And then there was that long minute when I realized it was a dream. Thank you.
Our next speaker is George Eliot Clarke. George is the 4th Poet Laureate of Toronto and the 7th Parliamentary Canadian Poet Laureate. He hails from Windsor, Nova Scotia as of 1960, a scholar of African Canadian literature at the University of Toronto. George has also taught at Duke, McGill, UBC, and Harvard. His recognitions include the Rockefeller Foundation Bellagio Center Fellowship in the States, the Pierre Elliott Trudeau Fellows Prize, the Governor General's Award for Poetry, the National Magazine Gold Award for Poetry, the Premio Poesis Romania, the Eric Hoffer Book Award for Poetry in the United States, and International Fellow Poet of the Year, Encyclopedic Poetry School 2019 from China. Please,
Yes.
in welcoming George Eliot Clarke.
Oh my golly, thank you so much. It's so wonderful to be here. Reading from Canticles 1, and the series is coming to an end this fall with Guernica publishing volume 6, which is Canticles 3, 2023 in Roman numerals. But anyway, from the very beginning of the project, Dante divines the dead, a preface to Inferno. Even pasted into poems, then posted for posterity. Thoughts are communiques from the dead, our buried selves, so plush in wisdom, vested in all secrets and versed in all science. They treasure their public silence and grant us only clandestine signs. How else should I audit Latin, deathbed whispers, snatches of errant ejaculations, or heresies conjured in sighs? Even embalmed corpses decorous prove urgently plangent, intense icons. A poet attends, if he'll not be Arctic mute himself, a grave, all snow white, blank of sense, or only a black ink blot, a sot. Love does survive the grave because it cannot live there. Sorrows weight down cadavers. I pass into a cemetery, concentration camp of confessionals, and fathom, for instance, a diabolical holiness backing a slave seller, some pallet barker marketing Ethiop brawn and breast, and notching the negrescent sexes. I do deplore this dead one's once vile venery and violence, yet his personal evil is ended. His thought wrought his fate. Memory is judgment. I prefer the moon, that pleasant stone, that piece of marble that's escaped. Moonlight out creams cream. Even a modest graveyard houses blissful, deathless whiteness. I inspect the tombs, inscribed or plain alabaster, the moneyed craftsmanship, and despite odd ornaments, I say all the monuments are petty marbles, blank trophies. But in sifting their epitaphs, their epithetic immortality amid oblivion, their evaporating vespers, I register rumors of truth. With funeral finesse, I down a glass of moonlight in hell, uncover even the cupidity of judges, each skeletal tribune in their decrepit eternity, and should want to mix my tears with my ink in these fields of burial. In each adroit cell, I discover the plenitude of story, not the extinction of song. Consider the resurrection itself is an explosion of earth. Christ was liberated at Golgotha, yes, but dwells lonesome till judgment day. Twisted shadows, reflex cherub or reprobate saint emanate from geranium-scented dirt. I know that history disinters all. Worms diddle a corpse, roots riddle a coffin. History is never disinterested. Even a glittering king sports a blackberry crown, or a harsh, windy hero slumps, drilled by a spear. After flogging a lewd wench or a curd-faced crone, Bible puffed up blowhards deflate under scarcely trod graveyard soil, and hungers for gold ebb too, or bashful gal meets gallant lad, and he plies the ivory mound twixt her thighs, launches his trembling lance, his throbbing shaft, thrilling her sobbing shaft, savors lust that is fishy until both deceased become cold, petrified shadows like the statuesque dead of Pompeii. Lovers breathe in whirlwinds and breed in fog, play incandescent, transcendent specters, spelling out the hottest scribing, yet coldly impervious to morals. Two demonic, smutty priests leave their foul harems, their nests of bastards, and slump back in caskets, each displaying a deadpan, winsome visage, mimicking waxwork saints. Criminals killed in capital letters, plus soft-spoken, low-key tyrants, plus orators with ground-down sentences and well-ground teeth, plus celestial beauties, bestial, erotic, nuns with ratty habits all prove unacceptably septic, oozing macabre filth. My visions, cadenced eavesdropping. Nowhere is as sad as a cemetery. Words weigh like lead dust. Nothing is more chastening than decay for getting at truth. Each of us is a morsel of dirt fit for the grave's mouth. Vain are our intimate gymnastics, rapturous fury, exertions for procreation. Each abrupt baby after hysteria of birth lives on smuggled breath. All end in suffocating black cells where monks and monsters jostle, but where I can lurk and listen, jest and sob as the dead become translucent, so I become lucid. In my white moon paradise of chilling light, give I to my speech. Out of the illustrious grave, the great rent in the earth, I hear humiliated whispers, or the boisterous joking of lascivious old age, or inebriate howls, or sonorous reverential prayers. And I deliver them here in a slightly bony voice. Yet I don't know if I can be an angel's poet. Outside my mother's house, no one loves me. Some condemn my songs as off-key, bad luck chirping. The ways of gods and poets seem imbecilic, if not improvident. Life meets out sugar, but outweighed by the salt of flooding tears. Is my revelation light, or is it a light revelation? Hush, I hear the first regret and the last temptation. Under tapering cypress shadows, the dead congress in the grass. Always we cognoscenti are late. Ivy survives us wondrously as if unkillable as ink. Ravenna, Italy, 19th September 2012. Oh my golly, hey, thank you so much. And Lucia, thank you. Lucia, thank you.
You're welcome. I'm always bowled over when I hear you, George. Amazing. I'm bowled over. So Domenico Capilongo is a Toronto High School creative writing teacher and a karate instructor. His first two books of poetry, I Thought Elvis Was Italian and Hold That Note, as well as his short fiction collection, Subtitles, were shortlisted for several awards. His latest book of poetry, Send, is about the way we communicate. His work has been featured in several anthologies, as well as national and international literary journals. His forthcoming poetry collection is about words that were born in the 1970s. He writes an interview series called Un Momento for Italo Canadese. Please join me in welcoming Domenico Capilongo.
Thank you so much. Actually, my book has just come out. There's me. Hey, yes. Look at that hair. I'm so happy to share this new collection with you and tell you a little bit about how I wrote it and to challenge you to try to look up the way I wrote it for yourself. The Merriam-Webster Dictionary on their website has a little tab at the top called Time Traveler. When you click on it, you can put any date you want and it spits out all the words added to the dictionary in that year. So I did that for this year, 1972, the year I was born. And as another constraint, what I did was free write to each word and use only memories up to 7 years old. So it's a young Italian Canadian immigrant community and my young amazing parents who came to this country and built their life and their family. So I'm just going to jump around the dictionary and share some work. I'm going to start with the letter A, and this is happening last weekend and this month all over the city still. Okay, the word is apolypoprotein. Working together, the family, the community, with this one simple purpose, combining all of it in the dark, damp basement, open garage or closed garage so the neighbors couldn't watch, couldn't see the secrets, the method, me playing in the corner on a tricycle or big wheel. The neighbor kids had a green machine. With parents, aunts, and uncles, older cousins, the casings held firm, the feeding of the grinder, the deep red of raw meat, its squish sound pushed between fingers of tightly clenched fists. We've got to mention the butcher's name over and over, the deal we got, better than the family down the street, like some incantation. Don't push too hard, move too fast, keep your hands clean, don't kick up the dust. Come on, let's go. Don't want to be here all night. The room's slow motion, stop motion even. Just watching felt like some kind of help. I could taste it. Yes, making sausage in the garage. It still happens. So going over to the letter T, this word was added in 1972, tomatoey. So pages and pages of free writing, this memory came out. Whenever there was blood on television or in a movie, whenever some limb was severed or a head chopped off with a spurt of blood, my father would say, "Don't worry, it's just ketchup." Dipping fries would later trigger the goriest of flashbacks. Why did he say salsa? Maybe too wasteful for him. Instead, he chose the cheapest, poorest facsimile in the moment of our fear. It's just ketchup. I don't know if other Italians experienced this, but when I was a child, up into my teens, we would have knockoff pop delivered at our house in cases. There were several Italian Canadian companies that said, "Oh, 7-Up, we could do better than that." So this is about that. And the word is aspartame. We were not afraid of sugar. Cases of knockoff ginger ale and Coca-Cola delivered extra sweetened at our doorstep, alongside jugs of laundry bleach, bottles catching the after-school sunlight, beacons for schoolboys needing a fix. At birthday parties, the layered cream-filled cakes, kilos of crystalline sugar wrapped in espresso steam, and the swirl of diamond white cigarette smoke. Cousins rolling after-dinner fruit in mounds of sugar like cocaine. We were not afraid. Mountains of cookies set out like armies at baptisms, first communions, and weddings. Nothing could scare us into the arms of low-calorie sweeteners. Yes, the sugar. Couple more. One of my favorite TV shows as a kid is, due to inflation, is probably the $1 trillion million man. The word is gut-wrenching. I can't hold it. She's breaking up. She's breaking up. The dragged out crash you felt down low, his head wrapped in the operating room. Gentlemen, we can rebuild him. We have the technology. The sight of his arm, his leg cut wide open, the circuitry pulling apart, our bellies turning over with the imagining of pain. The world's first bionic man. The music kicked in, a cool cloth on a fevered forehead, Steve running full speed in his red tracksuit, kids anxiously ripping open their wrapped gifts on Christmas morning, hoping for the action figure, peeling back the rubber of his arm to expose the robotics. All around the neighborhood, for years, puckering our lips, wide open, framing our teeth, clenched tightly, spit spraying tongues, hard tapping the tops of our mouths, mimicking the sound of the $6 million man's movement. All right, and I will end with the final poem. For the word added in the dictionary in 1972, executive function. Words added the year I was born, reading and imagining the first time each was used, the 1970s, from birth to 7 years, the process of recall, smells, sounds, life simple, and all this looking back, digging out family albums from cold basements, finding, rediscovering, remembering the lost details of childhood, my parents, young, fearless, pen to paper under this pergola, summer sun, hand moving fast, writing longhand to capture it before the forgetting sets in. Thank you so much. September Stories. Let's keep it alive. Thank you.
I'm going to sneak in here, and I'm not going to introduce myself. I have my bio linked in the chat room. Enough to say I'm just starting my doctorate and I'm working on a new novel, but I will be reading creative nonfiction this evening. The essay is called On Wanderlust. $525,600 minutes at 30,000 feet in the air. I can't seem to shake Seasons of Love from Rent out of my head. Perhaps it's because since March 2020, our world has become a game of calculations. If I keep 6 feet away from another human and I'm wearing a mask, how likely am I to be exposed to COVID-19, 20, 21, 22, 23? If I wipe my airplane seat down with disinfectant sanitizer wipes, will I truly eliminate 99.9% of germs? What is the probability that the droplets from a passenger's sneeze 3 rows behind me and to my left will reach my eyes, nose, and mouth while I'm sipping water beneath my mask from a plastic glass handed to me by an ungloved flight attendant? I feel like a bookie playing the odds. We've been here before. In December 2021, there was a window of opportunity to travel, like a faint breeze you feel on a hot summer day, a tease, that hint of coolness on your skin to let you know it's all bearable, that you can get over the suffocating air engulfing you. The University of Glasgow was to have its graduation ceremonies in person, and I was determined to attend and then tack on some days of wandering from Glasgow to London. I would roam the countryside, stare up in awe at sturdy oaks stretching their bare limbs skyward, whiz round tight lanes with grazing sheep on either side, sending piles of fallen leaves rippling in my wake, and hum holiday tunes while sipping hot tea in the courtyards of ancient castles. I left December 1st when whispers of Omicron were just beginning to catch on that faint breeze. My meandering south to the home of Big Ben turned into a race to the finish line. I felt like Jack Bauer defusing a bomb, praying for a negative COVID test and a flight that was cleared for takeoff. Even so, here I am, Groundhog's Day. Rewind, play. I'm sitting high above the trees, above the birds, above the clouds, with butterflies in my stomach in anticipation of arriving somewhere else. A new surrounding to clear the cobwebs of confinement. I'm heading to Scotland, the Highlands to be precise. I've researched sites, planned places to visit, but like all explorers, I've left plenty of blank slots, planning for the unplanned adventure, yearning for new stimuli for my senses. This ticket gives me permission to roam, to explore, to fulfill the lust to wander and wonder. I've always been a roamer, never wanting to stay put for long. As a child, I became a princess with Pippi Longstocking in the South Seas, walked through the snow, hunted caribou, and built a log cabin with Jamie and Owasin in Lost in the Barrens, and traveled with Gulliver to Lilliput and Japan. Books were my escape beyond the walls of my family's tiny bungalow. When I grew up, I began to discover the world firsthand. For nearly 200 years, from the mid-1600s to the beginning of the last century, men, typically but not exclusively noble and or wealthy British sons of coming of age, embarked on their grand tours. Off they went to Italy, where their ears were cooed with the melodic sounds of regional dialects, their eyes straining to grasp the size and depth of Tintoretto's paintings on the walls and ceilings at the Scuola Grande di San Rocco, their hands longing to follow the curves of Michelangelo's David, and their hearts swelling at the sight of his Pietà. They collected art, books, and other artifacts to be transported back home, memories of far-off places they would peruse once back in their libraries. They roamed around Europe, taking in, absorbing into their thoughts and opinions something else. Is it a wonder that we have a need to wander? According to NASA, humans are driven to explore the unknown, discover new worlds, push the boundary of our scientific and technical limits, and then push further. While we're not all rocket scientists, the idea of discovery, the need to know what is not known, prevails. Robert Louis Stevenson said, "The great affair is to move." And in a recent article, award-winning journalist, author, and speaker Eric Weiner wrote, "Travel is in our genes. Nomadic life was no accident. It was useful. Moving to a neighboring band is always an option to avoid brewing conflict or just for a change in social scenery." Change in social scenery. This resonates with me. How many times have we heard someone say, or have said ourselves, "I need a change of scenery"? In 2020, physical distancing was expanding and traveling became a longing. It soon became nostalgic, and conversations with friends often included sentences that started with, "Remember when you went to?" Or, "I was thinking the other day of when we were in insert name of country here." The tighter the restrictions, the further my mind would roam. I binged watched seasons of Tony Robinson's Walking Through History and Somebody Feed Phil on Netflix. I craved to be elsewhere and to see places beyond my border and bordered up world. It soothed me to watch travel, at least. I clicked through pictures of the places I had visited, began calling up Google Maps and plotting potential trips, something to look forward to when life got back to normal. As it turns out, this roaming helped my mental health. In an article published by Nat Geo, writer Erica Jackson Curran cites a 2014 Cornell University study which delved into how the anticipation of an experience like a trip can increase a person's happiness substantially, much more so than the anticipation of buying material goods. I find travel inspirational, euphoric. My creative juices flow as my mind relaxes and becomes uncluttered by the routine tasks of everyday life. My senses are heightened, colors seem brighter, sounds crisper. I carry a small notebook to jot down ideas that pop into my head, the topic of this essay included. I'm that chuffed to be learning new sayings, making footprints on distant shores, and coming home with an expanded view of the world in which we live. The experiences of wandering stay with me long after I've returned home. They layer themselves in my heart and mind like hand-stitched linen that absorbs the scent of an old cedar chest. Who knows what memories will wander into my fictional worlds? Perhaps we can take Dr. Seuss literally, just this once, and believe that, be your name Buxbaum or Bixby or Bray, or Mordecai Ali Van Allen O'Shea, you're off to great places. Today is your day. Your mountain is waiting, so get on your way. No tests to be taken, no masks, such a treat. Restrictions are lifted, no app to complete. You're off to great places. Today you can cheer. Your venture is waiting. You've nothing to fear. Be you on subways or riding in cars, in airplanes or restaurants or tropical bars, you're off to great places. Today you can breathe, cough and sneeze in the air, out with the disease.